Okay, so you know how it is, right? You really want to learn new things.
Hmm.
Like you want to get a good grasp on them, right?
Yeah.
You want to like cut through all the fluff and like get right to the important stuff and learn it quickly.
Sure, for sure.
But it's just so much information out there.
Yeah, there's a ton.
And it can feel really overwhelming,
Yeah,
you know?
it can be.
And that's kind of why we do what we do.
Yeah.
So we go through a ton of stuff and we try to extract like the really, really important bits and the stuff that really matters.
Right.
And hopefully it's fun to listen to.
Absolutely. I think we do a pretty good job with that.
And hopefully it sticks with you.
I mean, that's always the goal, right?
Right.
To make it memorable and engaging so it actually stays with you.
So today we're going to talk about Leopold Mozart,
Oh, wow, yeah.
who is, of course,
Sub big name?
the father of
Right. The dad.
Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart,
The one and only.
the one and only.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think everyone kind of knows him as
Mozart's dad.
You know-
the guy behind the guy.
Mozart's dad, yeah.
Right, right.
But we're gonna dig a lot deeper than that.
Okay, cool.
So for this, we're mostly relying on this one really great scholarly article,
It's a good one.
which I will link to in the show notes.
I mean, people should really check it out if they're interested in this,
Yeah.
in going deeper into this topic.
Yeah. So what we want to try to do today is we really want to understand him not just as Mozart's dad, but as a really significant musician himself.
Right, like what were his contributions, you know?
Yeah.
How did he shape the scene?
Yeah. And I mean, he was, you know, a composer,
Right, he wasn't just a dad.
Yeah.
He was actually writing music.
a violinist,
Yeah.
a music theorist,
Uh-huh.
and a teacher,
And a father and a husband.
and of course, an incredibly influential figure for his children.
Yeah, both Wolfgang and his daughter Nannerl. I mean, we can't forget about her.
Right.
She was really talented, too.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is
So we want to get a sense of who he was.
yeah, this is your direct route
Right.
to understanding the full context
Yeah.
surrounding Mozart.
The musical world he came from.
Right.
All the influences.
So we're gonna start at the beginning with his life,
Okay.
and then we're gonna look at his compositions.
What kind of music was he writing?
Right.
What was his style?
Yeah, we're gonna look at his teaching, especially as it applied to Wolfgang and his daughter,
Nannerl.
Nannerl.
How did he approach their education?
Right. And then of course their very remarkable travels.
Yeah. I mean, talk about a dedicated dad.
Yeah.
Taking them all over Europe.
Yeah. So this is for you.
Yeah, we made this for you guys.
Yeah.
Our listeners.
So you can really understand who Leopold Mozart was.
Hopefully in a fun and engaging way.
Right.
So you don't get too bored.
Okay.
All right. Let's dive in.
Let's do it.
So Leopold was born in 1719 in
What?
Augsburg.
Okay.
And his father, Johann Georg Mozart, was a bookbinder.
So not a musician?
Not a musician, no. But they actually had this pretty deep family history in the Augsburg area going back like centuries.
Wow.
Different family members were involved in like masonry building, even art.
So like real craftsmen?
Yeah, like real hands-on skilled trades.
Okay, so not musicians, but
But definitely a tradition of craftsmanship in the family.
that's cool.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. So what about Leopold's education?
So he went to the Augsburg Gymnasium and then he went on to the Lyceum.
Okay.
And during this time, he was actually super involved in theater.
Really?
Yeah, both acting and singing.
Oh, wow. So he was
He was a performer from a young age,
okay.
and he also picked up the organ and the violin.
So he was really well-rounded.
Yeah, definitely musically inclined and interested in the arts in general.
Yeah.
So then he takes a bit of a turn.
Okay.
In 1737, he enrolls at Salzburg Benedictine University.
So it's like a big shift.
It is, yeah, like kind of going against the family tradition a little bit.
Right.
And initially he's studying philosophy and law. And he actually earns a bachelor's degree in philosophy in 1738.
So he was smart.
Yeah, he was definitely capable academically.
Okay.
And he actually graduated with commendation, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But his time at the university was actually pretty short.
Okay.
Like the very next year, he gets expelled.
Wow.
They said it was because of poor attendance and a general lack of interest.
So maybe he was just bored.
Maybe, yeah, or maybe his heart was already elsewhere.
Right.
Like, maybe he knew that music was his real passion.
So what did he do after he was expelled?
So pretty soon after that, he ends up in the service of this count,
Okay.
Johann Baptist Count of Thurn-Valsacina and Taxes.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah, it is a bit of a mouthful. So
All right.
he's like a pretty important guy in Salzburg.
Okay.
And Leopold becomes his valet.
Okay.
And he's also a musician in his household.
Okay. So kind of like a multi-purpose employee.
Yeah, exactly right.
Okay.
And this period seems to be really important for his music.
Oh, okay. Why?
Because in 1740, he publishes this collection of sonatas,
Okay.
and he actually dedicated it to the count.
Oh, so he was obviously trying to,
Trying to impress him,
yeah,
trying to show off his skills.
right.
But what's even more remarkable is that he actually engraved the copper plates for the publication himself.
Well, so this is back when,
Back when printing music was a really laborious process.
right. So he's really,
Hands-on.
yeah, and he wants to be in control.
Right, he's not just composing, he's involved in the whole production.
Right.
Which
Well,
I think says a lot about his personality.
so do you think this was like kind of his stepping stone,
I think so, yeah.
his next career move?
It makes sense.
Okay.
So in the early 1740s, he composed several German passion cantatas.
Now, what is a passion cantata?
So it's a vocal work that tells the story of Christ's passion.
Okay.
And these compositions are believed to have been pretty instrumental,
No pun intended.
no pun intended,
Okay.
in him getting a pretty big job in 1743. He gets appointed to the court orchestra of the Archbishop of Salzburg.
Wow. Okay. So that's like the big leagues.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal.
Okay.
He starts as a fourth violinist,
Okay.
so not the top spot.
Fourth chair.
Right, but he's in the orchestra.
He's got his foot in the door.
Exactly.
Right.
And quickly his responsibilities start to expand.
Okay.
He starts teaching violin to the choir boys at the cathedral.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he starts teaching keyboard too.
Okay. So he's really moving up
Yeah, he's obviously talented and hardworking.
and dedicated.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And so he keeps moving up the ranks.
Okay.
By 1758, he's the second violinist.
Okay.
And then in 1763, he gets a huge promotion.
Okay.
He's appointed deputy Kapellmeister,
And Kapellmeister is like the,
the music director, basically.
right. So he's like the assistant music director.
Exactly.
Okay.
So by the time his children are starting to show their musical talent,
Right.
he's already a very respected musician and teacher.
Right. He has his own career going.
Yeah, this is important to remember.
Yeah.
He wasn't just some guy who happened to have a prodigy for a son.
Right.
He was a real musician himself.
Okay. So let's talk about his compositions.
Okay, so the article gives us a really good overview of all the stuff he wrote.
Okay.
And it's kind of amazing how much variety there is.
Really?
Yeah, they talk about many contrapuntal and other church items.
So what does contrapuntal mean?
So basically, it's music with multiple independent melodic lines that are all woven together.
Oh, so it's pretty complex.
Yeah, pretty sophisticated stuff.
Okay.
So he's writing this really complex sacred music,
Okay.
but then he's also writing symphonies.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Tons of them.
Really?
Yeah, some of them are just for like a small group of instruments,
Okay.
like maybe 4 players,
Okay.
but others are for like a full orchestra.
So like the big orchestral symphonies?
Exactly.
Right.
But it wasn't just symphonies and church music.
Okay.
Over 30 large serenades.
Serenade?
Yeah, like outdoor evening entertainment.
Right.
And these often had solo parts for different instruments.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so he was really good at writing for specific instruments.
Okay.
And then there's the concertos.
So like concertos for...
Flute, oboe, bassoon, horn, trumpet.
So he wrote a lot for different solo instruments.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Okay.
And then you've got all this chamber music.
Chamber music.
Yeah, like trios and divertimento.
And those are for...
Smaller groups of instruments.
Okay.
He also wrote 12 oratorios,
Oratorios.
large-scale dramatic vocal works,
Oh, yeah.
usually on religious themes.
Got it.
And then he even did some theatrical stuff, like,
operas.
not quite operas, but like
Okay.
theatrical pieces, even pantomimes.
Wow.
So he was really involved in all sorts of different types of music.
Yeah, he really seems to have done it all.
He really did.
Okay.
And then there's these more like occasional pieces, like
What?
martial music,
Okay.
cookish music, which was really popular at the time.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine that.
Like this kind of exotic style.
Oh.
Even music with a steel keyboard.
What is a steel keyboard?
I don't know exactly, but it sounds cool.
It does.
And a musical sleigh ride.
A musical sleigh ride.
Yeah, so you can just imagine,
I can only imagine.
like the sounds he was creating.
Right, like the jingle bells and the horses and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty cool.
It is.
And then we've got marches.
Of course, you got to have marches.
Right.
Nachtige,
What are those?
night pieces, basically like serenades.
Okay.
And then hundreds of minuets, opera dances, that kind of stuff.
So, I mean, this is like,
Prolific.
yeah, he wrote a ton of music.
He really did. It's incredible. And I think it's really important to think about this in the context of Wolfgang's upbringing.
Right, so he's not just learning from other composers.
No, he's surrounded by his father's music.
Right.
He's seeing him compose, he's hearing him play.
So that's like a huge influence.
Right, that's like...
A masterclass every day.
Yeah, exactly.
That's by being around his dad.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about Leopold as a teacher,
Okay.
as a father.
Of course.
So let's start with his wife and family.
So he got married, and his wife's family was kind of middle class.
Okay.
They lived in the Salzburg region,
Okay.
and they had various jobs.
Okay.
Her father, Wolfgang Nicholas Pertl,
Okay.
he was in administration and judicial stuff.
Okay, so like a government worker?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
But he had some money problems later in life.
Really?
Yeah, which is interesting because...
Right, because we always kind of think of Mozart as
struggling, but
Yeah.
it seems like it might have been a family thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they weren't super well off.
Okay, so where did they live?
So until 1773, they rented an apartment in the Hagenauer house.
Okay.
And the Hagenauers are actually a really interesting part of the story.
Okay, why is that?
Well, for one thing, they were grocers.
Okay.
But they had these, like, really extensive trade connections across Europe.
Oh, wow. So they were like big-time grocers.
Yeah, they were doing international business. Okay.
And more importantly, they acted as bankers to the Mozarts.
Oh, wow. So they were, like, financing?
Yeah, they were giving them credit,
Okay.
especially during their tours.
Okay, so they were, like, patrons of the arts in a way.
Kind of, yeah. They were definitely crucial in supporting the family.
Okay.
And we know a lot about the family's travels because of the letters Leopold wrote to the Hagenauers.
Oh, okay, so these are really important historical documents.
Absolutely.
Okay.
They're considered the most important source of information about the Mozarts' travels in the 1760s.
Oh, okay.
And what's really interesting is that Leopold intended a lot of these letters for a wider audience.
Really?
Yeah, he was trying to promote his kids.
Okay.
He was showing off their talents to the archbishop, to the nobility, to everyone.
So he was like a savvy publicist.
Yeah, basically, he was really good at marketing his family.
Okay. But he wasn't just focused on their musical talents.
No, not at all. He
Okay.
was responsible for their whole education,
Okay.
and he was really well-rounded.
Like what kind of... So they did music, obviously, but also math, reading, writing literature languages, dancing,
Wow.
even moral and religious training.
Okay, so he really believed in a holistic education.
Yeah, he wanted them to be well-rounded individuals.
Okay.
There is this unconfirmed claim that a court singer might have also given Wolfgang some music lessons.
Okay.
But Leopold was definitely the primary educator.
Okay, so he was really the driving force
Absolutely.
behind their education.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Okay, so when did Wolfgang start showing signs of his talent?
Oh, really early?
Like how early?
Like 4 years old.
4.
Yeah.
Wow.
Leopold actually documented it all in Nannerl's music book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he started keeping track in 1759.
Okay.
And he mentions that Wolfgang was already learning pieces by other composers.
At 4.
At 4.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and even some of Leopold's own compositions.
So he was like learning from the master.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so
Yeah.
when did he start composing?
So his earliest known compositions are from 1761.
So he's 5.
5 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a little Andante and Allegro.
Wow, and those are like actual pieces?
Yeah, they're real pieces.
Okay.
And then in 1762, he wrote some more substantial pieces,
Like what?
like minuets and another Allegro.
At 6 years old.
At 6.
That's just mind-blowing.
It is.
Okay, so when was his first public performance?
So his first known public appearance was actually in September 1761.
So before he even started composing?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was at Salzburg University.
Okay.
He was part of a school play.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but he was dancing, not playing music.
So he was already a performer?
Yeah, he was already comfortable on stage.
Okay.
Even at that young age.
Okay, so this is all leading up to
To the tour.
their famous travels.
Right.
Okay.
So there's this possible trip to Munich in 1762
Okay.
where they might have played for the Elector of Bavaria,
Okay.
but there's no documentation to confirm it.
So it was just kind of a...
A rumor based on something Nannerl said later on. But what we do know for sure is that they went to Vienna later that year,
Okay.
from September to December 1762.
And that was like their first big international trip.
It was, yeah, they were really putting themselves out there.
Okay.
And they played twice for Empress Maria Theresa and her husband Francis I.
Wow.
Yeah, and in the homes of all sorts of ambassadors and nobles.
Okay.
And the Empress was so impressed that she gave them court clothes.
Really?
Yeah, like fancy outfits to wear for performances.
Wow.
And they actually wore those outfits in later portraits.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
So this trick was a big success.
huge success.
Okay.
In October, they got this big honorarium from the imperial paymaster.
Okay, so they were actually making money.
Yeah, they were doing pretty well.
Okay.
And they were asked to stay longer.
Wow.
And they even got invited to Versailles.
To Versailles.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And there's this Count Karl von Zinzendorf
Okay.
who wrote in his diary about how amazing Wolfgang was.
Really?
Yeah, he called him a poor little fellow who played marvelous.
And he said he was a child of spirit, lively, charming.
Okay.
And he also praised Nannerl's playing.
So they were getting rave reviews.
Yeah, and from people who mattered.
Right.
Like this Count was a pretty influential guy.
So I can only imagine how this must have fueled Leopold's ambition.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Like he must have been thinking, we got to do more of this.
Right.
We got to get these kids out there.
Okay, so what happened next?
So they go back to Salzburg in early 1763.
Okay.
And Leopold gets promoted to deputy Kapellmeister.
Wow. So they come back as heroes, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
And that same evening, Wolfgang performs at court for the Archbishop's birthday.
Oh, wow.
And the court chronicle mentions how everyone was amazed by both Wolfgang and Nannerl.
Okay.
Even back in Salzburg, they were causing a stir.
Okay.
And then just a few months later, they embark on this epic journey.
The Grand Tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
June 9th, 1763, they set off on a 3.5-year tour across Europe.
3.5 years.
3.5 years. That's a long time to be on the road.
It is, especially with 2 young kids.
Yeah.
But this was just the first of 5 major tours that they did over the next decade.
Wow. So they were basically professional travelers.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, so where do they go on this first tour?
All over the place.
Give me some highlights.
Okay, so Munich, Augsburg, Ludwigsburg, Schwetzingen, Mainz, Frankfurt, Koblenz, Aachen, Brussels.
So all over Germany and the surrounding areas?
Exactly.
Okay.
And in each place, the kids would perform either at court or in public concerts.
So they were building their reputation everywhere they went.
Yeah, they were becoming like international stars.
Okay.
And then they get to Paris in October 1763.
Paris?
Yeah.
Right.
They play for King Louis V.
Wow.
They do a bunch of public concerts.
Okay.
And most importantly, Wolfgang's music gets published for the first time.
Wow.
Yeah, his first 2 sets of sonatas for keyboard and violin,
Okay.
known as K69 in the Köchel catalog.
The Kirkel Catalog.
Yeah, it's like the standard way of numbering Mozart's works.
Got it.
So Paris was a big deal.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
It really launched his career as a composer.
Okay.
And then from there, they head to England.
England.
Yeah.
Okay.
They arrive in April 1764.
Yeah.
They stay in London.
Okay.
And they play for King George III twice.
Twice?
Yeah.
Right.
So they're playing for kings and queens.
Right. They're like the most famous kids in Europe.
Pretty much.
Okay.
And there's this really interesting article from May 1764
Okay.
in a publication called Hamburgische Berichte und Nachrichten.
Okay.
And it talks about their arrival in London.
Okay.
And it praises both Nannerl and Wolfgang's playing.
Okay.
And then it mentions all these rumors about them traveling even further.
Like where?
Like Scandinavia,
Right.
Russia, even China.
China.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they were already famous all over Europe.
It's incredible.
It really is.
Okay, so they were obviously doing these tours to promote their talents.
Right.
But did they benefit musically from all this traveling?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, how? So
they would often come across music that they couldn't find in Salzburg.
oh, interesting.
Yeah. So they were expanding their repertoire
Okay.
and they were meeting all these important composers and performers.
Okay, like who?
So in Ludwigsburg, they heard this famous violinist named Nardini,
Okay.
and Leopold was really impressed by him.
Okay.
In Paris, they met Schobert Eckert and Nannerl,
Okay.
and their music actually influenced some of Mozart's later piano concertos.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then in London, they met Johann Christian Bach,
Oh, wow.
one of Johann Sebastian Bach's sons,
Okay.
and they became really close.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Bach's influence on Mozart was huge. Like
Yes.
years later, Leopold even wrote to Wolfgang and told him to study Bach's music.
Really?
Yeah, he said even his simple pieces were masterpieces.
Wow. So Leopold really recognized the genius of Bach.
He definitely did.
Like, so these tours weren't just about performing.
No, they were like educational experiences.
Right.
They were shaping Wolfgang's musical development.
Okay, so what about later on?
So as Wolfgang got older,
Right.
Leopold started having problems with his position in Salzburg.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He and Wolfgang both complained a lot about the Archbishop,
Okay.
Colorado.
Okay.
They thought he was rude and insensitive,
Okay.
and they didn't like that Italian musicians were getting preferential treatment.
Oh, so like higher salaries and stuff.
Exactly.
Okay, so they were feeling kind of stifled.
Yeah, like they weren't getting the recognition they deserved.
Right.
But the article suggests that it was more complicated than that.
Okay.
So there's not really any evidence that Colorado mistreated them early on.
Okay.
In fact, Wolfgang actually had a formal position at court.
Really?
Yeah, he was a Concertmeister.
What's that?
Basically a concertmaster.
Okay, so he had a real job.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it seems like their desire to leave Salzburg might have been more about Leopold's ambition.
Okay.
He'd been trying to get better positions elsewhere for years.
Really?
Yeah, remember back in Vienna, he tried to get them to stay? And then in London and Italy, too.
Okay, so he was always looking for something better.
Yeah, he was always trying to move up in the world.
Okay.
And there's this comment from Empress Maria Theresa.
Okay.
She called them beggars.
Beggars.
Yeah.
Wow.
So maybe that was kind of the attitude of the aristocracy?
Right, like musicians are just servants.
Yeah, like they weren't really respected.
Okay.
So it seems like Leopold was trying to break free from that.
Right.
He wanted more for himself and his children.
Okay, so what about Wolfgang's music during this time?
So he was still composing for the court,
Oh.
but he wasn't really into it.
Really?
Yeah, he didn't write as much church music as other composers like Michael Haydn.
Okay.
So maybe he was already moving on to other things.
Right, maybe he was writing more operas and symphonies?
Exactly.
Oh.
And then things got really tough in 1777.
Okay.
Wolfgang went to Paris and Mannheim,
Okay.
and his mother died.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was a really hard time. And Leopold's letters to Wolfgang during this period are pretty harsh.
Really?
Yeah, he accuses him of being lazy and neglecting his mother.
Wow.
But you have to remember that he was grieving,
Right.
and he was stuck in Salzburg.
Okay.
So he couldn't really do anything to help.
Right.
So even though his words were harsh,
Okay.
he still loved Wolfgang,
Right. He was just...
expressing it in a really bad way.
Yeah.
But he was still a devoted father.
Okay, so what about after that?
So Leopold was actually there for the premiere of Idomeneo in Munich in 1781.
Idomeneo.
Yeah, it's one of Wolfgang's operas.
Okay.
And it was a huge success.
So he must have been really proud.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
But they still had their disagreements.
Okay.
In late 1786, Wolfgang wanted to go to London.
Okay.
And Leopold was totally against it.
Really? Why?
He said he wouldn't look after Wolfgang's children.
Oh, wow.
So it seems like he was getting tired of all the traveling.
Right.
And maybe he was worried about Wolfgang.
Yeah.
But he was still involved in his life.
Right. Even if they didn't always agree.
Okay, so what about the last few years of his life?
So after Nannerl got married in 1784,
Okay.
she moved to St. Gildan,
Okay.
and she was the only one of his children who stayed in regular contact with him.
Oh, wow.
Wolfgang was kind of off doing his own thing,
Right.
and Nannerl actually felt a bit neglected by him.
Really?
Yeah,
That's sad.
it is.
Okay.
And then Leopold died in May 1787.
Okay.
And it seems like this actually affected Wolfgang's composing.
Really?
Yeah, he slowed down for a bit after his father died.
Wow.
So even though they had their ups and downs, they were
Yeah.
still really close.
Okay, so looking back on Leopold's life, what are the most important takeaways?
Well, I think the biggest thing is his role in Wolfgang's development.
Right.
He was the one who recognized his talent,
Right.
and he nurtured it.
Right.
He gave him a fantastic education,
Right.
and he took him all over Europe.
Right.
So without Leopold,
Right.
Wolfgang might never have become the Mozart we know today.
It's true. And we also can't forget that Leopold was a talented composer.